What's the difference between the coach who struggles to get clients and the one who has a wait list? Well, here's the thing. Despite what you may believe, it's not more certifications. It's not how many calls you offer as part of your package. And it's not even how much experience you have. It's having a clear, specific niche. And on today's episode, we're diving into why niching down is so important, how it helps you stand out in a crowded market, understand your audience on a deeper level, and I'm going to give you some practical steps to test and refine your niche. So if you are new around here, welcome to another episode of Coach Smarter, brought to you by Unshakable Habits. I am your host, Stephen Box. And by the end of today's episode, you will not only understand why narrowing your focus is a superpower, but also have actionable steps to choose and test your niche confidently. So let's jump in. I want to start with a question. If you need heart surgery, would you go to a general doctor or a cardiologist? I'm going to guess you'd go to the cardiologist, right? Why? Because the specialists know the problem very well, right? A cardiologist understands your heart extremely well. They do surgery all the time. Therefore, if you needed heart surgery, you want to go to someone who both understands your heart and someone who has done surgery. You're not going to go to your GP who maybe kind of understands your heart, but not on the same level, and they've never done surgery in their life. You wouldn't go to them. So that's what we want to think of when we think about niching, right? You are becoming a specialist, right? You are like the heart surgeon. You're going to really know your very specific area better than other people will. But this isn't what most health coaches do. Instead, they fall into the trap of trying to help everyone. And I get it, because the reality is there's a fear there of, well, I don't want to lose clients, or I don't know exactly who I want to help yet. And the reality is there was a time where you could get away with that, because most people, when they were looking for a personal trainer or health coach or nutritionist or anything else, there wasn't really the option to do online. They had to do it in person, which meant they were only looking at people that on average were about 3 to 5 miles away from their home. So you are only really competing with those in a 3 to 5 mile radius of that person's home. And if you're one of those people, congratulations, you had a potential client. But that's no longer the case. And because that's no longer the case, simply saying I help people lose weight no longer helps you stand out, because you're now not competing against maybe 3 or 4 other trainers in your area or 3 or 4 other health coaches in your area. You are now competing against hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of other people that do what you do. So when we are trying to be very general and broad so that we don't miss out, what ends up happening is that we end up with generic messaging that actually fails to connect with anyone, and we completely miss out. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but by trying to stay broad and appeal to anyone and not lose out, that's actually exactly what's going to end up happening. Now, let me give you a number here. According to Global Wellness Institute, the wellness industry, now this is obviously more than just coaches, but this is the entire wellness industry, is projected to grow to $7 trillion this year. That is absolutely an insane number. And there's a lot of coaches entering the space. So standing out is not going to get easier, it's just going to get harder. And if you're just going with a very broad messaging, you're not going to stand out. But if you can get more specific, if you can start to narrow your focus down to a specific niche, now you can start to address specific pain points. You can build stronger connections with that audience, and you can become the go-to expert in your area. And therefore, you can actually stand out and start getting more clients. Think of it like a GPS. If you don't give the GPS a destination, it's going to be absolutely useless because it doesn't know how to tell you to get to anywhere when it doesn't have a destination. On the other hand, if you tell it exactly where to go, it will give you the exact directions to get there. Niching down is like putting a destination into the GPS. So now that we understand why niching is so important, let's talk about the secret sauce to truly knowing your audience and standing out. And that is blending demographics in psychographics. Now, maybe you are not familiar with these terms, so let me kind of break them down for you. Demographics is things like age, gender, income level. So for example, if I were to say, 40-year-old or, male entrepreneurs over 40 who live in the Atlanta area, right? That would be pretty specific, and that's what most people are going to tell you a niche is. But that's not a niche. That's a demographic. And it's not enough to know that your ideal client is a 35-year-old mom in Chicago, right? Or in the United States. You really need to know what keeps her up at night. What motivates her? Was she afraid to even admit to herself? And that's where psychographics come in. Psychographics are values, fears, desires, and habits. So as an example, going back to my 40-year-old or 40-plus-year-old male entrepreneur in Atlanta, maybe he feels guilty for not spending enough time with his family, struggles with stress eating, and values efficiency over perfection. Now I know a little bit more about him, right? Now I can start to figure, okay, based on those things I know, what problems does he likely have, and how can I help him? So this is important because demographics help you to identify where and how to reach your clients. Psychographics help you craft the messaging that's going to really resonate with them on an emotional level. So let's make this very practical for you today. So first of all, I want you to write down 3 demographics of your ideal client. So just 3 things about them that are based on things like age, gender, location, income level, profession, whatever, right? Just 3 demographic details about that client. Write those down. Then I want you to write down some psychographic details. And I'm going to give you 3 different things here that I want you to write down. Number 1 is write out 3 of their biggest problems. And this is key. Write them in the same way that they would say them. Don't put them in your words. Put it in their words. And I'll give you some more information here shortly on how to go about getting that. Second thing you're going to second thing you're going to write down is 3 things that they are doing unintentionally, it's an important key there, that make those problems worse. So 3 things that they are doing right now, and maybe they're things that they think will make it better. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but maybe they think these things will actually make it better, but it's actually making it worse. So a really good example of this is the person who wants to lose weight and they are crash dieting. And they think that's the right thing to do because that's what society has told them to do. But you and I both know that most people are not going to crash diet and maintain the results. They're going to regain the weight. So that is a great example of a mistake that someone is making that's actually making things worse. Okay. And then the third thing is I want you to write down 3 things that they have tried that didn't actually work for them. Okay. So once you have those, you now have a pretty good understanding of your audience. But understanding is only half the battle. G.I. Joe has been telling y'all this for years, right? Knowing is half the battle. And understanding your audience is only half the battle. Because you need to make sure you are testing this, you are refining this information, that you are really getting the language right so that you are speaking directly to that person. So that's why I want to go ahead and now and talk to you about how to test your niche. So if you think you found your niche, this is what you're going to do. Number 1 is you are going to engage directly with potential clients. This is where social media can be super handy. You can just make a post and just say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a program. This is who I'm looking at helping. This is the problems I'm looking to solve for them, right? And the more specific you can be, the better. Again, saying help them lose weight isn't really going to make you stand out. What is the phrasing that they're using? What are the problems that they're experiencing that you can actually help them solve? And be as specific as possible with those. And just let them know that you're looking for a few people to have a conversation with to see if this is even a feasible thing to bring to market. And I promise you, you have a couple of friends or family members who will be happy to hop on the phone with you, who are in your ideal niche, and give you some insights. And when you get on the phone with them, you can ask them some of these questions, or you can ask a little bit more broad question and see where they go with it. So for example, you might say, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to, whatever? If you could solve that problem, or if you could only solve one problem, what would it be? Like, what's the most important thing for you? And kind of start to figure out what that looks like, right? The next thing is you can create targeted content. Now, I would wait until I've talked to some people, got a pretty decent idea of the problems that people are experiencing, and then I would do this. I don't have an ability to walk you guys through this, but if you do a search on YouTube, I'm sure you can find videos for this process. But on Facebook, there's a very specific ad type. There are like these 15-second ads that you can run. And they're super cheap. Like, you can literally pay like 1 to 2 cents per view on the video. And they're really useful for going through and getting some information, right? So if you see that people are clicking on a certain title, then you know that's content that people are actually interested in. And if you can go back and look at the watch time and you can see, okay, which topics do people kind of stick around the longest for, to figure out which ones are the most popular and which ones are most engaging. But I wouldn't necessarily put a whole lot of stock into the watch time unless you're really good at speaking. I would be more concerned with which topics are people actually clicking on first and foremost, because those are the videos that people are interested in learning more about. So for example, maybe you make a quick video that says, 5 simple morning routines for postpartum moms to get their energy back. And you put that video out there and you get a lot of clicks on it. And then you do another one that says, 5 simple evening routines for postpartum moms to help get their energy back. And so we really just changed that one word. We just changed morning and evening. And you see, does that get more clicks? Does that get less clicks? So now you can start to understand, like, where are their issues at? Or maybe you say 5 simple morning routines for postpartum moms, and you leave that part, but instead of saying for more energy, you come up with a different benefit and you test that one out. And so you can really run these unlimited and see what resonates with people. It's a really simple way to do it. It's fairly inexpensive. I mean, you could honestly spend less than $100 a month and get some really great information here. Another thing you can do is you can always offer a beta service. This is a program that you tell people outright, like, hey, it's a brand new program. I'm kind of testing some stuff out. I'm not making any huge promises on the outcomes, but I really need people to help me test it out and see how things are going. This is a great approach, especially if you're a new coach, because it justifies you being able to charge less money to them, but it also enables you to get that feedback and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you as a new coach. And you get to see, more and you get to learn more information about what their struggles are as well, which will help you in terms of this marketing. And then, of course, as you go through this process, make tweaks to it, make adjustments to it, especially when you're looking at those problems, those mistakes, and those things that they've tried. You're going to add more and more things to the list as you go through this testing process. Just remember that testing isn't about perfection. It's about progress. So each time that you experiment with something new, each time you put out something new, every time you have a conversation with somebody, even if you find out that a previous thought you had is completely wrong, that's okay, because it's bringing you closer to clarity. So a couple of quick concerns that I know people may have that I want to address before I wrap this episode up. So number one, we already kind of talked about the idea of fear of missing out, that if you niche down, you're going to lose out on potential clients. So I'm not going to completely revamp, or I'm not going to completely revisit that one, I should say. But what I will point out to you is this. Even if it were true that niching down might limit your opportunities, I want you to ask yourself, how many clients do you really want to even take on? Because most coaches don't really have a desire to try to go coach 100 people, especially if you're doing one-on-one coaching. Most coaches I know only do about 10 to 30 clients one-on-one. Some obviously do more. Some do even maybe a little bit less. But I'd say 10 to 30 is probably about the average. And as a mentor of mine, Jonathan Goodman, says, if you have 30 clients paying you $300 a month, you have a $100,000 business. So do you really need a whole bunch of people? I would argue that you don't. Another concern that people might have is, what if I choose the wrong niche? What if I get this wrong? What if it just fails miserably? Hey, here's the good news. You're not stuck with it. You can change your mind at any time. No one is going to make you stick with it. Totally normal thing. And the third concern I want to address is the fear of outgrowing your niche. And this is really where people, I think, make the mistake most of the time, right? It's this idea of like, I don't want to narrow down. And it goes back to that idea of losing out, obviously, right? But the question becomes, what if I want to expand later? And the good news is you can. As a matter of fact, this is almost every super successful person that you see. Because I know this gets brought up a lot. The really successful people aren't super niched, right? They're kind of niched, but they're also kind of broad. And people go, well, look at this person. They're successful and they're not niched down. They started niched. And then they built up a reputation, and then they expanded out their product services. And you could do that. It's a starting point, right? But for right now, you need to niche down to stand out. And then once you've started building a clientele, once you started building a reputation, you have a little bit more leeway to kind of expand out. So just remember, clarity is not just a nice thing to have. It's the foundation for sustainable success. So real quickly, let's recap. So we covered why niching down is essential, how to combine your demographics and psychographics to understand your audience, and I gave you some practical steps to test your niche. So if you're still trying to serve everyone, it's time to draw the line in the sand and say, nope, this is who I'm going to help. So I want to give you a challenge this week. Write down your ideal client's demographics and psychographics. Remember, 3 demographics, and then answer those 3 psychographic questions that I gave you earlier. And then I want you to create one piece of content or offer a beta service to test your niche. If you want, I'm going to offer this. I may regret this decision, okay? Because what I'm about to do is kind of crazy, but I'm going to offer it anyways. If you want my feedback on what you come up with, send me a message on Instagram, and I will look over your demographic and psychographic, give you some feedback there if you're headed in the right direction or not. The link is down in the show notes. And if you found today's episode helpful, please share it with a fellow coach and consider leaving us a review on Apple or Spotify so that we can help more coaches build thriving, aligned businesses. Until our next episode, this is Stephen Box reminding you that coaching smarter creates a lasting impact for you and those you serve.